Hi everyone. So it's time for us to take a look at ACT practice test number 1. The first question says 8th grade girls basketball team played a total of 13 games. They scored 364 points. What was the mean average? Okay, well, so I remember that the mean is the total number of points divided by how many games. And so we would have 364 divided by 13, which comes out to 28 approximately. So my answer for 1 is D. 2. When 4 and 3/7 is written in an improper fraction, what is the numerator of the fraction? Well, 4 and 3/7. I do 4 times 7 is 28. 28 plus 1, 2, 3 is 31. This is 31/7. The numerator is 31, and so K is my answer for number 2. Number 3. If 4x plus 18 equals 38, then x equals, okay, well, let's subtract 18. And we get 4x equals 20, and we'll divide by 4. And we'll get x equals 5, and that corresponds with choice C. Number 4. I am doing a quick pace here because remember, we're supposed to be doing 60 problems in 60 minutes, and even though I'm doing explanations, I kind of want to see how close to that time I can get you. Okay, John weighs 1.5 times as much as Ellen. John is 1.5 times Ellen. If John weighs 144 pounds, and he's 1.5 times as much as Ellen, how much does Ellen weigh? So if we divide both sides by 1.5, we come up with Ellen equals 96 pounds. And that's choice G. G for number 4. 5. 5 says, what positive number, when divided by its reciprocal, gives a result of 9 over 16? What positive number, when divided by its reciprocal, equals 9 over 16? Well, let's simplify this first. This is x divided by 1 over x, which is x times x over 1, which is x squared. On the left-hand side, we have x squared. On the right-hand side, we have 9 over 16. So when we take the square root of both sides of this equation, we get x equals the square root of 9 over the square root of 16, which is 4. And don't forget that plus or minus. Plus, minus. Okay, so do I see my answer? Yes, my answer is here, and it is choice B. B for number 5. How about number 6? 6 says if the cube root of x equals 1/4, then what does x equal? Well, what undoes cube root? Cubing does. So I need to cube both sides. On the left side, I get x. On the right side, I have 1/4 to the third, which is 1 to the third over 4 to the third, or 1 over 64. And so G is my answer for number 6. G is my answer for 6. Okay, first 6 down. We're 1/10 of the way there. 7. 7 says x squared plus 14 equals 63. Okay, so if I subtract 63. If I subtract 14 from both sides, I get x squared equals 49. And so I know x equals plus or minus 7. Which of the following could be x then? Well, positive 7 is here, and that's choice B. 8. 8 says two vectors. We're going to do vectors next semester. Two vectors are given. Vector 1, vector 2. We're asked to add those vectors together. 7, -3, A, B. We're going to add those vectors together, and the result will be 5, 5. And they're asking us the value of A. Well, 7 plus A should equal 5. So I know that A equals -2. I didn't really need to know a lot about vectors to do that problem, especially since they showed me here v1 plus v2 equals 5. Okay, so that's choice F. F for number 8. How about 9? 9 says, based on past graduations, a university estimates that 6% of the graduating class will not attend graduation. Based on this, if there are 1,250 students, how many will not attend? 6% of the 1,250. And of means multiply almost always in math. So 6% of 1,250 means 0.06 times 1,250. And I end up with 75 students will not attend. And that's choice A for number 9. 10. Well, 5.2 to the third plus 6.8 squared equals what? Well, so I'm going to talk to you two ways about this. One way is to use that estimating thing that your middle school teacher wanted you to do and you never wanted to do, and say that 5.2 is close to 5, and 5 to the third would be 125. And 6.8 is close to 7, and 7 squared is 49. And so I'm looking at 174 here, but maybe a little bigger, maybe a little less, so around 174. Which of these numbers is close to 174? And I see choice K. But this test is with calculator, so the only way I would encourage you to do that is with calculator. No need to estimate there. Okay, let's take a look at number 11. Lexi uses her debit card to make a purchase totaling $40. When she records the debit in her checkbook register, she accidentally adds $40 to her balance rather than subtracting it. Uh-oh. So let's imagine she had $100 in her account and she was supposed to subtract 40 to say that she now has $60 in her account. But what did she do? She added 40. So she thinks she has $140. How far off from her actual balance is she? Well, she's not $40 off. She's actually $80. She thinks she has 80 more dollars than she actually has. There's 40 there. There's another 40 there. Because she went up 40 instead of down 40, she's off by $80. She thinks she has $80 more than she should, which is why E is my answer for number 11. 12. 12 says 3 to the third divided by 9 plus 6 squared minus 12 divided by 4. Okay, so let's see. I remember I'm supposed to start PEMDAS inside parentheses. So 36 minus 12 is 24. 3 to the third divided by 9 plus 24 divided by 4. And 3 to the third, because exponents come next, is 27. And then I'm supposed to do division before I do addition. So 3 plus, and what's the result of this division? 4. So I get 7. 7 is my answer. 7. My notes say I'm supposed to get 9. Let's go back and check and see if we can find my mistake. 36 minus 12 is 24. Oh. No, but 24 divided by 4. I like that. 24 divided by 4 divided by 4. Come on, silly. Is 6. And that's why 9 is my answer here. And 9 is H. H for number 12. How about number 13? 13 says, if bananas cost 24 cents and oranges cost 38 cents, what is the total of X bananas? Okay, so each of those bananas cost 24 cents. And Y oranges. Each of those oranges cost 38 cents. So this would represent the total amount of money. How many bananas times dollars per banana? How many oranges times dollars per oranges? Look, if we do 24 cents per banana times X bananas, we can see that bananas will cancel and be left with a certain total number of dollars. So this is going to give me dollars, this is going to give me dollars, and when I add dollars plus the dollars, I get dollars. And so we end up here with choice B for number 13. Okay, 13 done. Let's take a look at 14. Ooh, 14 comes with a picture. What percent of the entire figure is shaded? Well, let's count. Let's count how many boxes there are total. I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. I see 24 total. And what percent of them are shaded? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 are shaded. And this reduces to 1 in 3. And what percent is that? Well, if I take 1 and divide it by 3, I get 0. But 3 goes into 10 3 times, with 9. And then I have 1 left over, and I bring down the 0, and 3 goes into 10 3 times. And so I see growing here 33%, or 33 1/3% actually, and that's choice H. H for number 14. 15. Let's take a look at 15. In high school senior class, the ratio of girls to boys is 5 to 3. The total of 168 students in the senior class, how many girls are there? Okay, so the ratio of girls to boys is 5 to 3. I see the total of this would be 8. So girls represent 5/8 of all the students. If there are a total of 168 students, then I want to multiply the 5/8 of the total. That's every 5 girls, there are 3 boys. Total is 8. So girls to total times the total. And I see that I can do some canceling here and get 21 times 5, or 105 girls. And that's why C is my choice for number 15. Please note, it was the ratios that I used, the ratio of girls to total that I used times the total number of kids in the senior class. Okay, 16. 16 says, on her first 3 geometry tests, Sarah scored 89, and then she scored a 93, and then she scored an 84. If there are 4 tests and she wants a 90 average, okay, so there's this one more test coming, and she's going to divide that number by 4 so that she gets an average of 90. Well, let's see what happens here. We're going to multiply both sides by 4. 360 equals 89 plus 93 plus 84 plus x. And when I subtract each of these from 360, I get x equals 94, and so J is my answer for number 16. 17. What is the solution set for? Oh, this is like right out of our Algebra Basics unit, isn't it? We'll add 11 to both sides. We'll get 3x is greater than or equal to 33. We'll divide by 3. We'll get x is greater than or equal to 11. Hey, and I don't even have to put this in interval notation. This is choice E. E for number 17. What about 18? 18 says, Dylan is going to randomly pick a domino from a pile of dominoes that are all facing downward. Of the dominoes in the pile, 48 have an even number of dots on them. He randomly picks a single domino. If the probability that he picks a domino with an even number is 3 out of 4, how many dominoes are in the pile? Well, let's say that x equals the number of dominoes. dominoes. Okay, and we know that the probability that he picks a domino with an even number is 3/4. 3/4 of the total number will be even. But we're also told that 48 of those dominoes have an even number of dots. So 3/4 of the total number of dominoes is the number of evens, and the number of evens is 48. So if I multiply both sides by 4/3, I get that x equals 64. There are a total of 64 dominoes, and that's choice J. How about number 19? 19 says, what's the value of 3x minus 8y when x equals 4 and y equals negative 1/2? Okay, so 3 times 4 minus 8 times negative 1/2. Well, negative times negative is positive, and 1/2 times 8 is 4. 3 times 4 is 12. So 12 plus 4 is going to be 16, which is why choice D is my answer for number 19. 20. 20 says, the court reporter types every word spoken during trials and hearings so that there is a written record of what has transpired. Suppose a certain court reporter can type 3.75 words per second. Wow, that's so fast. And a trial transcript contains 25 pages with 675 words per page. If this court reporter typed the transcript at the typical rate, how long did it take? Well, let's find out how many words there are by multiplying 25 times 675. And then let's say that's the total number of words, 25 times 675 words. But I see here this rate. So if I take the total number of words and divide by that rate, words per second, I'm going to end up with 25 times 675 times 1 over 3.75, and notice the words will cancel and I'll be left with seconds. But we don't want seconds here, we want minutes and hours. Well, let's see now. If this is a number of seconds and I want to go to minutes, I know that there are 60 seconds in 1 minute. So these will cancel and I'll be left with a number of minutes. When I multiply on top and multiply on the bottom and I divide this total by this total, I end up with 75 minutes, which is 1 hour, 60 minutes, and 15 minutes left over. So that would be choice F. F for number 20. Remember, on a problem that has lots and lots of words in it and lots of stuff that may be confusing to you, I'd probably skip that one and come back later to it. Don't lose your place, though. If you skip 20, you should next bubble in 21. Okay, so the lines L and M are parallel such that the measure of angle A is 68 degrees. And what is the measure of angle F? So here's F. Well, I know that these are supplementary, so this would be 122 because they're a linear pair. And then I know that this angle and this angle are corresponding angles, and I remember Ms. Dozier and Ms. Maliagoda teaching me that corresponding angles were congruent. So the measure of angle F is 122 degrees. And that corresponds to 122. Sorry, that adds up to 190. I meant 112. Okay, so 112 corresponds to D. D is my answer for 21. 22. Oh, lots of words. So again, if it's lots of words and you're troubled by that, skip it and come back later. I'm going to do it now, though. On a map, the scale is the ratio of the distance shown on the map to the actual distance. Geography teacher has a map on her wall where the scale is 1 inch on the map is equal to 100 miles in the real world. She uses the school's copier to shrink the large wall map down to the size of a piece of paper to hand out to each of her students. To do this, she makes the map 1/4 of its original size. 1/4 of its original size. And so now it's going to be 1/4 of an inch on your student map equals that 100-mile distance. Okay, and so now we see two cities are 2.5 inches apart, or 5/2 of an inch apart. How many fourths is that? Well, if I multiply by 2 over 2, I get 10/4. Each of those fourths is 100 miles. I have 10 of those fourths. So 10 times 100 miles tells me that those cities are 1,000 miles apart. Even though they're only 2.5 inches apart on your student map, they are 10 quarter inches apart, and each quarter inch is 100 miles. So 10 times 100, 1,000, which is why J is my answer to 22. Okay, let's take a look at 23. 23 says, I've got this piece of paper, 8.5 by 11. So we've got 8.5 and we've got 11. Suppose you want to cut strips of paper that are 5/8 of an inch wide and 11 inches long. So 11 this way and 5/8 of an inch this way. What is the maximum number of strips you could cut from one letter-sized piece of paper? So how many of these can I get if each of these widths is 5/8? Well, I want to take this 8.5 and divide it by 5/8 of an inch. So first I'm going to turn the mixed number into an improper fraction. 8 times 2 is 16 plus 1 is 17, divided by 5/8. And then I remember Mrs. Rowan, my 7th grade math teacher, saying, when you're dividing with fractions, you flip and multiply. So this will be 8 over 5. I can do some canceling on the diagonal. I get 68 over 5, which reduces to about 13 whole strips. And that corresponds to choice D. D is my answer there. It's a little more than 13, but it says what is the maximum number of strips, and 13 times 5 is 65. There's not quite enough left over for me to cut out yet one more 14th strip. So the most I can get is 13 strips here. 24. We've got a picture with a lot of stuff going on. We know that this is 55 degrees. And we know that AB equals AC. So that means this is equal to this. Hey, and by the way, do you remember the isosceles triangle theorem that says if in a triangle you've got two congruent sides, then the angles across from them are congruent? That might be something we need to know. What else? Oh, and we know parallel lines. And because these are parallel, we know these are alternate interior angles. So we know that this is 55 degrees. And since these are congruent because of the isosceles triangle theorem, we know that this is 55 degrees. And then we know that the three angles inside of a triangle should add up to 180 degrees. So 55 plus 55 plus this angle up here that I'm going to call x should add up to 180. So I get 110 plus x equals 180, or x equals 70. Okay, what's the measure of angle ACB? Oh, well, I didn't need to do this. I already knew ACB. Lesson learned, it helps to read the question all the way through. We know that angle ACB is 55 degrees because it's congruent with this angle because of the alternate interior angle theorem, and this angle is congruent with this one because these are alternate interior angles. So for number 24, my answer would be G, 55 degrees. How about 25? 25 says, what is the slope of the line that passes through negative 10, 0, and 0, negative 6? Okay, well, I remember the slope formula from the second day of school this year was y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So in our problem, that's going to be negative 6 minus 0 over 0 minus a negative 10. So I get negative 6 over 10, or negative 3/5. The slope is negative 3/5, and that corresponds with B. What about 26? For all x plus 4 times x minus 4, ooh, look, a difference of squares, plus 2x plus 2, x minus 2 equals what? Well, they just want me to foil and combine like terms. So here we have x squared minus 16. Here we have a little more foiling to do. 2x times x is 2x squared. 2 times x is 2x. Negative 2 times 2x is negative 4x. And negative 2 times positive 2 is negative 4. So let's combine some like terms. We've got some x squareds, 3 of them. 1 of them plus 2 of them makes 3 of them. And we can combine these x's over here for minus 2x. And we can combine these things that don't have any x's to get negative 20. 3x squared minus 2x minus 20 is choice H. H for number 26. Okay, how about 27? 27. What is the length of the segment with endpoints 3, negative 6, and negative 2, 6? Well, from when we started our functions unit, we did the distance formula, and that's what we need here to find the length of the segment between these 2 points. Square root x1 minus x2 plus y1 minus y2. Don't forget the squares, because this comes from the Pythagorean theorem. 5 squared plus negative 12 squared is 25 plus 144, or the square root of 169, which is 13. There are 13 units between them, and that's why D is my answer to 27. How about 28? If 60%, right, you've got to have that decimal there, of times x is, h, is 80. Okay, so they want me to solve, what is 30% of h? Well, I'm going to find h first, and then do 30% of h. Okay? So if I divide both sides by 0.6, h equals 80 divided by 0.6. I didn't bring my calculator, so what I'm going to do instead is turn 0.6 into 3/5, and I'm going to multiply both sides by the reciprocal 5/3. So I get 400 over 3. 400 over 3 is h. Now, what's 30% of h? Well, I'd want to multiply over here by 30%. So I'd want to multiply over here by 30%, but since I don't have my calculator, 30% is 3 over 10. These cancel, and I get 30% of h equals 40. Okay. I guess you could set that up this way as well. You could say 60% of h equals 80. 30% of h would be half of 80. But most people don't see to do the problem that way, so I wouldn't show that as a first go. The translating is usually what people do. 29. 29 says set A contains 7 consecutive even integers. Alright, let's think about consecutive even integers. 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, and that's only 5 of them, okay? If the average of the set is 46, which is of the following is the smallest? Okay, so 46, and we have 7 consecutive even integers. So some of them will be bigger. But some of them will be smaller, like 44, 42, and 40. 7 of them, 3 bigger than, 3 smaller than, and going down by 2 each time. I can see the smallest value is 40, which is why C is my answer to number 29. Okay, what about 30? 30 says, which of the following statements describes the total of the first n terms in the arithmetic sequence below? Okay, so we will be doing arithmetic sequence, but it won't be until like April, May. So, yeah, watch this video. So I see 1, 3, 5, 7, and so on. There is a formula for the sum of an arithmetic sequence. And that formula for the sum of an arithmetic sequence, an infinitely large one? No, the first n terms. Okay, so that recipe is n over 2, a sub 1 plus a sub n. A sub n is going to be the arithmetic rule for this. A sub 1 is the value there. N is how many terms we have. Now, I don't know how many terms we have. We have n terms, so I have to leave an n there. And I can plug a 1 in here. But what about a sub n? So I notice that this rule goes up by 2 each time. But wait a second. If I plug a 3 into this rule, 3 times 2 is 6, I should get 5. So I need to minus 1. Let's confirm that. If I plug in the 4th term, so n equals 4, I get 8 minus 1. Oh, that is 7. Good. Okay, so let's tidy this up. N over 2. The 1's cancel. 2n. These cancel. Oh, n squared. Okay, so the total is always equal to n squared. And so that's choice J. That's a tough question before May. So I don't know what to advise you on that one if you're taking the ACT before then. Except maybe you should practice that a little bit. All right, 31. And more than halfway through. Which of the following matrices is equal to the matrix product of -2, 0, 1, -3, 2, 2? Okay, so we're going to be doing matrix multiplication in January when we come back from winter break. And what we know here is this is a 2 by 2 matrix because it's got 2 rows and 2 columns. This matrix has 2 rows and only 1 column. These numbers being the same tells me that I can multiply the matrices together, and this tells me how big my solution is. My solution is going to be 2 by 1. Okay, so I build a little 2 rows and 1 column matrix, and then I carry out the matrix multiplication. To fill in this box, I take this row times this column. So -2 times 2 plus 0 times 2, and that's -4. And then I take this row times this column. 1 times 2 plus -3 times 2 is 2 minus 6, or -4. So my solution, or product matrix, is a 2 by 1, -4 over -4, which is why choice D is my answer. We'll be doing this in January, which is in time for those of you taking the ACT to get more practice in matrix multiplication. Okay, 32. Playground is x plus 7 units long, and x plus 3 units wide. if the square, the side length of x is sectioned off, so this is x by x, if we take that out, and this was x plus 3, then we know this is only 3 here. And if this is x plus 7, but we take x out, then we know this is 7. Alright, what are we supposed to do with this? To make a sandpit, which of the following could be the remaining area in the playground? Well, we could think about it as the area of the whole playground, which is x plus 7 times x plus 3, length times width. But we're going to have to subtract that sectioned off area for the sandbox, which is x times x. So x squared plus 7x plus 3x plus 21 minus x squared. I notice the x squareds will cancel. I combine like terms. I get 10x plus 21, and that corresponds to choice G. G for number 32. Okay, now, I think 33 is the toughest problem in the packet. Really? No kidding. 33. Assume that m and n are non-zero integers such that m is greater than 0 and n is less than 0. Which of the following must be negative? Okay, let's take a look at these. Negative n to the m. Well, so this is a negative number raised to an even power. Negative number raised to an even power. This negative number raised to an even power. Well, why isn't that always going to be negative, Mr. Cooper? Oh, that's a good question. I think it's time to bring out the big guns on this one. Let's take a look. Sometimes, when the problems are tough, you look up the answers. This is one of those times. Okay. Difficulty high. Okay, because m is greater than 0, m is positive. Because m is less than 0, m is negative. And then this one, if m is even, then n to the m is positive. And so negative n to the m is negative. However, if m is odd, oh, it just says greater than 0. It just says positive. It doesn't say even. I fell into that trap. Silly me. Okay, so let's go back through these choices that we were given here for 33. So this works as long as m is even. But what if m is odd? So if I have negative 3 to the first power, well, that's going to be negative and negative, and that's going to be positive 3. This is not a negative answer, so I can see that the first choice doesn't work. Negative m times n. Well, this is a positive number times a negative number, which is going to be a negative, times a negative is a positive, so B doesn't work. What about C? M to the n. Well, we've got a positive raised to a negative number. Well, that's not negative, so that didn't work. And then we've got negative n minus n. Okay, this was a negative number, and I put a negative in front of it. So now I have a positive number. And this was a positive number, but now I'm subtracting it. Yeah, that doesn't have to be negative. I mean, I could put a number here like 9, and then it would be negative. But they're saying guaranteed to be negative, must be negative. And since I can imagine this situation, that's not negative, so that's not my answer. Which is why E is my answer. Oh my goodness, that's a lot of work. I'm skipping that kind of a problem until I'm all done with everything else, and I'll come back to that. 34. The point -3, -2 is the midpoint of a line segment, standard XY coordinate plane, where the endpoints are 1, 9, and MN. Which of the following is MN? Well, let's be smart about this. I mean, we could certainly do something crazy like use the midpoint formula, where we say that that midpoint x value is the average of these x's. And we do -6 equals x plus 1. And we get -7 equals x. And the only x with -7 is f, okay? I think it's even easier to do this problem this way. Okay, so you've got one number, and then you have your midpoint, and then you have this other number, the other endpoint. The distance from here to here, how do I get from 1 to -3? I subtract 4. So to get from -3 to x, to get from the middle to the other end, I've got to subtract 4 more. -3 minus 4 gets me that -7. Okay, 35. 35 says if f of x equals 16x squared minus 20x, what's f of 3? Well, you should all be very comfortable with f of 3. Don't make any small mistakes here, though. 3 squared has to come first. And then here I have 144. And then 20 times 3 is 60. And so I end up with 84. 84 is my answer there. And that's choice C. C for number 35. All right, what about 36? What's the length of AC? Well, you know, I don't even need the distance formula for this one. I can just count. AC is this. So how far is it from 1 to 5? 1, 2, 3, 4. It's a distance of 4. And so my answer is G. G for number 36. We counted. Now we couldn't do that for AB. For AB, I'd have to use the distance formula. But for vertical or horizontal lines, I can just count spaces. Okay, 37. Let's take a look at 37. 37 says, if f of x equals 1/3 x plus 13, and g of x equals 3x squared plus 6x plus 12, what's f of g of x? Well, we just did this in our functions unit, and we know, according to this notation, we're supposed to plug g of x inside the x's of f of x. So I'm supposed to take all of that and shove it in there. When I do, I'll have 1/3 3x squared plus 6x plus 12. Don't forget this, plus 13. See how g of x has replaced this x? And now we need to distribute the 1/3 to each of these. 1/3 times 3, 1/3 times 6, and 1/3 times 12. Don't forget the plus 13 is still there, so when we combine like terms, we get x squared plus 2x plus 17, and that's choice C for number 37. 38. Okay, 38 says, what is the equation of the line that is perpendicular to y equals 2/3 x plus 5? So I see the slope here is 2/3. So I know from day 2 of this year, the slope of the perpendicular is the opposite reciprocal. I have to flip and change the sign. Now we want the perpendicular line that contains 4, -3. So y equals mx plus b. Let's plug in our -3, our -3/2, our 4, and solve for b. So I get -3 equals -6 plus b, or b equals 3. Not quite done yet. Need to plug this b and this slope into y equals mx plus b. So y equals -3/2 x plus 3, and that corresponds to choice H. H for number 38. How about 39? 39 says, we've got this formula, C equals 5/9 F minus 32. Notice here that Celsius is a function of Fahrenheit. I plug in a Fahrenheit number, and I get out a Celsius. Okay, so which of the following is the Fahrenheit equivalent to a reading of 95 Celsius? Okay, well, 95 Celsius means I plug a 95 in for C and solve this equation. Well, I'm going to multiply both sides by the reciprocal of that fraction. There's no way I want to distribute 5/9. I'm going to multiply both sides by 9/5, because then these cancel and these cancel, leaving me f minus 32 on that side. And on this side, 5 goes into 5 once, and 5 goes into 95 19 times. So I've got 19 times 9. What is 19 times 9? 19 times 9 is 1, carry the 8, 9, 171. So now let's add 32. And it looks like we get 203 degrees Fahrenheit. Is 95 Celsius, and that is choice D. D for number 39. Okay, let's take a look at 40. We're 2/3 of the way through, because there are 60 total questions. 40 says, when 3 times x, or 3 times x is increased by 5, the result is less than 11. Less than 11. Which of the following graphs represents this? All right, well, let's subtract 5. And we get 3x is less than 6. And we'll divide by 2. We didn't divide by a negative, so we don't have to change the direction of that inequality. So we want x is less than 3. Now notice we want less than 3, not less than or equal to. So our answer should have an open circle on it. You know, it would be good if I said divide both sides by 3, and 6 divided by 3 is 2. There we go. And that's why J is my answer to number 40. This line starting here at 2 and going that way. X is less than 2. 41. 41 says, what's the value of cosine of R? Okay, so we remember that cosine 5 R hypotenuse. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. So we're going to have cosine R is 5 over the hypotenuse. Well, I need to find the hypotenuse in order to say what the cosine of R is. So how do I find that hypotenuse? Well, I know that in this case I can use Pythagorean theorem. One second, please. And when I use Pythagorean theorem, I see 5 squared plus 5 squared is hypotenuse squared. So 25 plus 25 is hypotenuse squared. 50 is hypotenuse squared. I take the square root of both sides and I get 5 times 5 times 2, or 5 root 2 is the hypotenuse. So this is 5 root 2. Now, cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. So let's plug our 5 root 2 in here. Now notice these will cancel, and I'll have 1 over root 2, which I rationalize, and I get root 2 over 2. Notice I needed to be able to rationalize that denominator in order to see that C was my solution. Okay, 42. Marvin has 2 saltwater fish tanks in his home. One has tangs and angelfish in a ratio, tangs to angelfish, in a ratio of 5:2. In a second tank, he has angelfish and puffers. Oh, he has tangs and puffers in a ratio Marvin wants to put a tank in his office with angelfish and puffers in the same ratio he has at home to make it easier to buy food for them in bulk. What ratio of angelfish to puffers should he use? Okay, well, let's take this equation and solve it for t. Okay, I'm going to call that my helping equation. And I'm going to multiply both sides of this equation by a, so that I see that t equals 5/2 a. Now, where I see t in my other equation, I'm going to replace with 5/2 a. So I have 5/2 a over p equals 2/3. Now, I remember learning in the 9th grade that to solve a proportion, I can cross multiply. So 5/2 a times 3 equals 2p. All right, well, we're almost there. Let's see now. If I multiply both sides by 2, I get 15a equals 4p. So my ratio, and we want the ratio of angelfish to puffers. Well, if I divide both sides by 15, I get the ratio of angelfish to puffers is 4:15. So that's choice K for number 42. Okay, let's take a look at 43. 43. The volume of a sphere is given by the formula V equals 4/3 pi r cubed. We did that recently when we did variation. Where r is the radius of the sphere? What is the volume when the diameter is 6? Well, diameter equals 6, and we know that 2r equals d. So radius is diameter divided by 2, where 6 divided by 2 is 3. So we're going to plug a 3 in for radius. V equals 4/3 pi 3 to the third. V equals 4/3 pi times 27, because 3 to the third is 27. Well, I notice I can do some canceling here, and so I get V is 36 pi. 36 pi is choice D for number 43. How about 44? 44 says, if x isn't equal to -1, which of the following is equivalent to this expression? Okay, so x squared minus 5x minus 6 over x plus 1 plus x plus 1. Well, so I can factor here, okay? And I've got x minus 2, no, x minus 6, x plus 1 over x plus 1 plus x plus 1. These will cancel, leaving me x minus 6 plus x plus 1. 1x plus 1x is 2x. Negative 6 plus 1 is minus 5. And that's why G is my answer there. So we did some of this recently, didn't we, when we were simplifying rational expressions? Don't forget that. 45. 3/4 of the way through. Which of the following expressions is the greatest monomial factor, okay, the greatest monomial factor, one term that we can pull out of each of these? We're looking at 60a to the third b plus 45a squared b squared. Well, you know, if you're not sure, you could always do this. You could always say 60 is 2 times 2 times 3 times 5. A to the third is a times a times a, b. And then 45 is 3 times 3 times 5, a squared, b squared. So what do they have in common? Well, I can take a 3 and a 5 out of each. I can take an a squared out of each. I can take a b out of each. So 15a squared b is going to be my greatest common factor here, And that's choice A. Choice A for number 45. 46 and 47 require us to look at this chart. I'm not going to redraw the chart. I'm just going to take a look at the questions and see what we can do here. Which of the following best describes the percent change in population, percent change, from 1985 to 1995? Okay, so percent change. In 1985, the population was 3,000. So 46, population was 3,000. Okay, 3,000 in 1985. And then what about in 1995? Well, in 1995, we're down to 2,000. 2,000 in 1995. So the recipe I remember from middle school was percent change equals new minus old over old. So our new number here is 2,000, our old number 3,000 over our old number. So I get negative 1,000 over 3,000, which is negative 33.33%. And that corresponds to G. G is my answer for 46. 47. Which of the following years contains the median population of the data? All right, so there's no easy way around this. And oh boy, you get to do a lot of problems like this and much worse in stats. So if I'm looking for the median, I have to list all the populations. So in 1985, I have 3,000. And in 1986, I have 1,000. And in 1987, I have 5,000. And in 1988, I have 5,000. And in 1989, in 1989, I'm here at 4,000. In 1990, I'm at 3,000. In 1991, I'm back to 4,000. In 1992, I'm down to 1,000. 93, I'm at 3,000. 94, I'm at 2,000. And 95, I'm at 2,000. Woof. And it asked me what's the median population. Well, remember, median is the number in the middle when you put them in order. So 1,000, 1,000, 2,000, 2,000, 3,000, 3,000, another 3,000, and then 2 4,000s and 2 5,000s. Okay, so let's count from the ends to the middle. That takes that, 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 and there's our median, 3,000. What year had 3,000? Okay, so when I look back at this table at 3,000, I see 1985, I see 1990, I see 1993. And 1990 is the only one of those three choices, so my choice is C. That's a pretty complicated problem for number 47. Number 47, 3,000 was the median, but which year had that? 3 years to choose from, but only one on the list. That one was 1990, so C is my answer to 47. Okay, let's take a look at 48. Ooh, 48 comes with a two-way table. 48. Okay, so with this one, table results identifying males and females with and without college degrees who are unemployed or employed at the time of study. If one person from the study is chosen at random, what is the probability that the person is employed with a college degree? Okay, so let's see if we can figure this out. When we look at employed people, I see here in the table that employed people with a degree, female, is 188, and employed male with a degree is 177, and there are a total of 800 people in this. So that's going to give me 365 over 800, and that's going to reduce to 73 over 160, which is why choice F is my answer to 48. Okay, I like to think you did a lot of two-way tables last year in Algebra 2 when you did probability. If not, let me know. I can hook you up with some more. Which of the following expressions gives the number of distinct permutations in the letter's geometry? Well, I see here that there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 letters. But I have to divide out duplicates. See how there are two E's? So I have to divide by 2 factorial. And that's why C is my answer here. If we had Mississippi, I would have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 factorial over, I've got 4 S's, I've got 4 I's, and 2 P's. Okay, that's the number of distinct permutations. 50. Let's take a look at 50. So we're asked to write the equation of this inequality. And we didn't do this yet. We will be doing it probably in early December. Let's start with this line. Let's see if we can write the equation of the line here first, and then we'll worry about the shading and the inequality symbol. So it looks to me like 0, -4 is a point on that curve. Now, I'd like to find another point on that curve, and it kind of looks like 3, 0 is a point on that curve. So let's take a look and see what we can do here. We've got the y-intercept. What about the slope? -4 minus 0 over 0 minus 3. So I get -4 over -3, which is positive 4/3. So I have a positive slope. That makes sense. And I have a negative y-intercept. So I could write y equals 4/3 x minus 4. But I have an inequality here. Notice how this point, 0, 0, is not a solution. So if I plug 0 over 0 into my inequality, this should be no. So let's plug 0, 0 in. I get 0, -4. Now this should be a no. Well, because this is a no, that's yes, Mr. Cooper. Because this is no, I need that one. 0 is less than -4. No, it isn't. See? No. And so that tells me I want this. Why is it less than and not less than or equal to? Because this line, if you look close, is a dotted line. Okay? And if you don't believe me, we can always plug in a number like 3, -5. That would be over here somewhere. So let's plug in 3, -5. -5 is less than 4/3 times 3 minus 4. -5 is less than 4 minus 4. Is -5 less than 0? Yes. And so we've written this inequality properly. This inequality is choice J for number 50. Okay, last 10 questions. Let's see if we can crank through them. Sadly, we're at the hour and 4-minute mark, so we're running too slow. You need to go faster when you do the ACT, which is another reason why you should skip those really long wordy problems and that scary M to the N kind of thing. Get down everything you can know as fast as you can, and then use any extra time for going back to those wacky problems. Okay, 51 says h of x comma y comma z. So this is not a function because h is defined in terms of 3 variables in this most interesting way, minus y z to the third. So that's what h is. Then they want us to evaluate h of 2, negative 1, 3, which means we plug in a 2 for x, a negative 1 for y, and a 3 for z. Okay, so 4 times 2, negative 1 squared, minus negative 1, 3 to the third. Minus a minus is going to be plus. Negative 1 squared is going to be positive also. So I end up with 8 plus 27, or 35, which is why choice E is my answer to 51. 52. The radius of a circle is increased so that the radius of the new circle is triple the original radius. Triple the original radius. So if the area of a circle is pi r squared, I'm replacing r with 3r. So pi 3r squared. Well, when I apply that squaring, I get 9 pi r squared. Well, that's a whole 9 times bigger than the area of the original one. How many times larger is the area of the new circle than the area of the original circle? The area of the original circle was pi r squared. The area of our new circle is 9 pi r squared. It's 9 times larger, and therefore k is my answer to 52. Okay, 53. We'll be doing this in January. The graph of f of x equals 0.5 sine 2x is graphed below. What's the period of the function? Well, here's our b value, and we know that period is 2 pi over b for sine and cosine. So if I do period equals 2 pi over 2, the period of this function would be pi, and that's why C is my answer here. 54. What is the value of x in this equation? We've got cube root of 4x minus 12 plus 25 is 27. So we want to isolate that cube root. We get the cube root of 4x minus 12 equals 2. Now I have to cube both sides. Remember, this is not squaring both sides, so this is not a must-check problem. This is cubing both sides. So I'm going to have 4x minus 12 equals 8. I'll add 12 to both sides. I'll get 4x equals 20, or x equals 5. And that corresponds to choice J. J for number 54. How about 55? Can I get 55 in here? Maybe. We've got this picture, we've got this center, we've got a distance to a chord. This is 3. We're told that the chord is 8. We know that this radius from the center is perpendicular to the chord, and therefore it bisects the chord. This becomes 4 and 4. And they'd like to know the area of the circle. Well, in order to know the area of the circle, I need to know the radius. And how do I see the radius in this picture? There's the radius, and look, a right triangle. How long is the radius? Well, 3 squared plus 4 squared equals r squared. If you didn't remember your Pythagorean triples, you could always use the Pythagorean theorem to find out that r squared is 25, or r equals 5. So if the radius is 5, then 25 pi is the area of our circle, and that's choice D. D for number 55. Okay, 56. 56 says if f of x equals 3 to the 3x plus 1, and g of x equals 27 to the 2/3 x minus 1/3, For what value of any does the graph of f intersect the graph of g? Hey, we were just talking about that in our functions unit. We said that intersections look like this algebraically. So I want to set 3 to the 3x plus 1 equal to 27 to the 2/3 x minus 1/3. Now, what they'd like us to do is not graph this on the graphing calculator. Instead, they'd like us to rewrite the base like we did in our Algebra Basics unit. So this is 3 to the 3rd raised to the 2/3 x minus 1/3. And what happens when I raise a power to a power? Well, I multiply those powers. 3 times 2/3 x minus 1/3. When I distribute that 3, when I raise this power to each of these 3's cancel, and I'm left with 2x minus 1. So on the left-hand side, I have 3 to the 3x plus 1. On the right-hand side, I still have a base of 3, but my power is 2x minus 1. Now, we could certainly take the log or ln of both sides, and we will later this year. However, we could just use the one-to-one property. Look, these things are supposed to be equal. If the bases are the same and the terms are equal, what must be true about these exponents? Well, the exponents must also be true, be equal to each other for these terms to be equal. Okay, so we'll subtract 2x from both sides, we'll subtract 1 from both sides, we'll get x equals -2. I get x equals negative 4 was, what did I miss? Mr. Kukla, what did you miss? Oh, that says +3, not +1. I miss being able to read. I really do miss being able to read. So I'm going to subtract 3 from both sides. So -1 minus 3 is -4. Okay, and so that's choice F for number 56. Number 56 is F. 57. What is the value of x that satisfies the equation log base 3 of 5x minus 40 equal, minus log base 3 of 5 equals 2? Well, first we need to condense this into our one log using our log properties, and we'll be doing that at the end of the month or the beginning of the next month. Log base 3 of 5x minus 40 over 5 equals 2. And I can exponentiate to get rid of the log. Use 3 as a base on both sides. So these will cancel. On the left, I'm going to have 5x minus 40 over 5. And on the right, I have 3 squared, which is 9. Okay, so to solve this equation, let's multiply both sides by 5. We get 5x minus 40 equals 45. We have to add 40 to both sides now. We get 5x equals 85, or x equals 17. X equals 17 is choice A. A is my answer to number 57. Okay, what about 58? The finite arithmetic sequence has 5 terms. The first term is 4. What is the difference between the mean and the median? Well, all right. So an arithmetic sequence goes up by the same amount or down by the same amount each time. So let's say we go up by 3 each time. So 4, 7, 10, 13, 16. So this would be a sample of a 5-term finite arithmetic sequence whose first term is 4. Now it says the difference between the mean and the median of the 5 terms. Well, let's see what the mean is and what the median is. The median is the number in the middle when we put them in order. Good. What about the mean? So for the mean, I have to add these all up and divide by the 5 numbers. So I've got 10, 20, 30, 39, 46, 50 over 5, which is 10. So what's the difference between the mean and the median? 0. 0 is the difference, which is why F is my answer to number 58. Okay, last 3 problems on the last page. No, that was 58. Last 2 problems on the last page. Cosine of BAC. Okay, so we said that cosine was adjacent over hypotenuse, and cosine of angle BAC is 0.6, which is also 3/5. So if cosine of BAC, this angle, is adjacent over hypotenuse, this is a 3 and this is a 5. If the hypotenuse is 15, what's the side length of BC? Well, what do I have to multiply this by to turn it into 15? I'm going to have to multiply this by 3. So what am I going to have to multiply this by? Well, if I multiply it over here by 3, I have to multiply over here by 3, and so I get 9. You could always set this up as cosine angle BAC equals adjacent over hypotenuse. And if we know that the cosine is 0.6 and adjacent over the hypotenuse of 15, if we multiply both sides by 15, we see that the adjacent is 0.6 times 15, which would be 9. So we can get at our answer that way as well. There's number 59. And our last problem, number 60, the table below shows several points that lie on the graph of a parabola. Ooh, a parabola. Based on the data of the table, what is the value of y when x equals -4? Well, remember that a parabola is symmetric with respect to the axis of symmetry, which passes through the vertex. Where's the vertex? Well, look, these are symmetric, these are symmetric. This is my lowest point. This is my vertex. Okay, so let's use symmetry here to help answer the question x equals -4. If we go out one step from our vertex, notice how these are the same. And if we go out another step from our vertex, notice how these are the same. Well, I need to go one more step to get to -4. And that means I need to go one more step here. Aha! If I plug in a -4, because of symmetry, I should have 13, which is why J is my answer to number 60. Okay, 60 questions in 77 minutes. You're going to have to go fast, kids. All right, take care. Hope this helps.